Welcome to the Real Horror Stories channel. This channel is based on the real horror incident which is shared by our viewers. In this episode 11 stories shared by Hashim from Morocco. Hashim said he liked the stories about jinn which was shared by Isabella from Norway. And it's inspire him to shared some creepy jinn and witch stories which he heard from his friends. Thank you so much Hashim, hope you share more and more creepy stories with us. First story. The park encounter. A man posted about how he would meet this guy when he would jog through the park right after Fajr, and only on the days he would be late for his Fajr prayers. They met twice and even went to breakfast after the jog. He did not see him for a while, and on one evening, he was taking a stroll in the park at night and met him again. Except for this time, he looked a little strange. His voice was much deeper and his features seemed darker and evil in a way. He asked whether he would like to have dinner together, and just then the man received a call on his phone. His ringtone was the azan, and when he looked up, his friend had disappeared. After that, he caught a very high fever that lasted for a few days. Second story. The Faithful Jinn. A man wrote about how he went to pray tahajjud at the mosque near his home, and while he was praying he heard the door open and someone came to pray next to him. He did not pay much attention to the man, and as he went out and saw that there was only one pair of slippers outside which were his. He quickly ran back inside and saw that no one was there. Third story. The ominous cat. Someone posted about a story how when his maternal grandmother was on her deathbed, a cat started to appear in their home. The cat would even appear in the home when all the doors and windows were closed. It had a really bad smell and a very dirty coat. And whenever someone recited a holy verse from the Quran, it would vanish. After the grandmother passed away, the cat would still appear, and the few times that it did, everyone in the house fell sick. Yikes. Sounds like this story was commissioned by some dog lovers. Fourth story. The Bride of Karsas. This is a very popular story that everyone in Karachi has heard, and obviously, so have I apparently. Quite a while ago, a young bride and her groom were headed home after their wedding. The car was involved in an accident and both of them passed away. The bride is sometimes seen walking on the road by those driving by. A lot of people believe she is still there looking for someone to help her and is reliving the accident. Fifth story. The Dancing Girl. This one is a story which was personally narrated to me by my maternal grandmother's maid. My grandparents' house is huge, and for a better part of the year, the house is unoccupied since they are out of the country. My grandmother's maid's family was staying at the house and her brother-in-law was sleeping in the sehen, veranda, when suddenly he heard the sound of pile, anklets. He opened his eyes to see a woman dressed in a complete lenga choli asking him not to sleep there. He obviously freaked out and ran off to join his family. Safe to say, I never feel completely at ease in certain rooms at my nano's house. Sixth story. The Bed Companion. This happened to a friend's mother. She was taking a nap in the afternoon and suddenly felt her bed shift like it would if someone had laid down beside her. She turned to look at what it was and saw the profile of a man lying beside her. She could not make out his face. She turned back around and she couldn't move, which led her to read some verses from the Quran until she felt like she could move again. Seventh story. The Strange Hitchhiker. This another story my mother's uncle told me. After attending a wedding late at night, a young couple was making their way home on their motorbike. On a stranded road, their bike stopped working, and while the man was trying to figure out what was wrong, a strange-looking man appeared and asked them for help. The man was already frustrated and told him that he could not help him, and couldn't he see that he was already knee-deep in his own problems. All of this happened while his pregnant wife looked on. The strange man was angered by his response and said something threatening and disappeared. Later on, the couple went home and did not think about the incident much. A few days later, the wife delivered her baby. However, the baby had a deformity in his skull, which looked like someone or rather something had taken a huge bite out of it. 8th story. The summoning gone wrong. Like a lot of young teenagers, the person who wrote this was in the mood for some fun with their cousins. And of course, like all of us at one point, they tried to summon some ghosts. One of the cousins started chanting something under her breath when suddenly a cold wind blew in the room even though no windows were open, and in the next second, the cupboard fell down. The kids all screamed and ran out of the room and never really spoke of the incident again. 9th story. The other mother. A man posted about how when he was a child and staying at their nanny's house for the summer, something freaky happened. He was sitting with his mother when suddenly his cousins came into the room to ask how she had gotten inside the house and the room so quickly. Both son and mother were confused since she had been in the room all evening. The cousins then told her that just a few minutes ago she was outside in the garden, and when they asked her if she was okay, she said she was tired and went towards the house. The kids followed her to make sure she was okay, but she had disappeared out of sight quickly. 10th story. The humming. This guy posted about how he was making chai and heard a faint humming of knots. He ignored it until he realized it was 1 a.m. and the only house near his place had been empty for the last 6 months. While this could have another explanation, it's still scary to think about. 11th story. The shaking windows. A colleague narrated this story to me. She was sitting in her room in the evening when suddenly, all the windows in her house started shaking with a lot of force. There was no wind outside and the force was so great that it couldn't have been caused by mere wind. She rushed outside her room to find her father in the next room. He's a man who is very learned in religion and has people come to him for spiritual help. He told her not to worry since the spirits that were outside were trying to get in but they couldn't. How scary is that?